Hey guys, Rollout here with LEGO Beyblade Team Bladebreakers. I want to start by acknowledging that there is a large existing LEGO Beyblade community, and most of the bays that they build actually function like the genuine high-performance tops. They're built solidly enough to spin from a launcher, and they're designed to battle properly, which is awesome. But with these, I'm going for something different. Because most LEGO Beyblades seem to be based on the Metal or Burst series tops, and nearly all of them require upward-facing anti-studs due to the nature of the tried-and-true launching mechanism. And honestly, I think it's ugly. So with these, I've prioritized visual appeal over all functionality. They still spin, obviously, but they don't shoot from a launcher, and they certainly don't battle very well. I just wanted some nice-looking tops based on the Plastic Series Beyblades that I grew up with. Of course, we'll take a look at Dragoon first, and just like the old toys, each one of these breaks up into a weight disc, an attack ring, a blade base, and a bit chip. All four of them actually have the exact same weight disc, and each of them is built around this large Technic gear just because it has so many different connection points. The teeth on the gear can also be used to hand spin these tops pretty darn quickly. For the attack ring, I've cheated a little bit by adding a clear circular element to keep this together. In actuality, each of the attack rings is comprised of 4 separate pieces. There are ways to build an attack ring in one solid part on a Beyblade like this, but again, aesthetics was my priority, and I was able to add more detail by splitting them up this way. Each blade base is made using a 4x4 dish with a unique tip. In Dragoon's case, I used a round 1x1 tile, which is extremely flat. I think this best represents his very aggressive rubber tip, and it has really interesting ramifications for the way this one in particular spins. For assembly, the attack ring plugs in to these half pins all the way around the weight disc. The blade base attaches to this red axle, and finally the bit chip plugs into the center. And there is Dragoon, who has the most flat base of the 4, and therefore stands on his own quite well. If you spin him flat on the ground, he wobbles around quite a bit, which probably makes him the weakest of the 4. But the trick with this guy is launching him on the edge of this piece, at an angle. And if you do it properly, he travels quite aggressively, which is very attack type and very Dragoon. Note that I'm launching him with a right spin just because I'm right-handed and that's easier for me, but it is just as possible to launch him with a proper left spin as well. Dranzer's attack ring is made up of 2 larger wedges and 2 smaller wedges, giving it that spiral shape. I decided to make him dark blue rather than normal blue just because the parts I wanted to use more readily came in this color. And we can top things off with the bit chip. Now, while the blade base doesn't change form between this and a sharper tip, I think that this round 2x2 jumper basically looks exactly like the bottom of Dranzer, and it's fairly flat, so just like Dragoon, he stands upright quite well. The flatness of his base does give him some similar attributes to Dragoon in that at an angle, he spins much more aggressively. But typically, he is a lot more stable and a lot more consistent. Draciel's attack ring is also comprised of 4 identical pieces, but they're a little bit more bulky and a little bit more complex. Draciel's blade base is supposed to have metal ball bearings in it to keep everything stable, and while I was limited by parts usage here, I think that the round 1x1 for the tip works pretty well. Finally, the reason the attack ring is so complex is that I really wanted to separate the orange so that it didn't mingle with the bit chip. Now, the Lego logo on the tip makes things a little bit more wobbly, but it can still stand upright for display quite well. The extra parts in his attack ring make him easily the heaviest of the 4, and that in turn makes him quite stable and quite balanced, which is, of course, very Draciel. Driger is very similar to Dranzer, and likewise, the attack ring is comprised of 2 larger pieces and 2 smaller pieces, only this time they spiral in the opposite direction. The blade base has the tallest and sharpest tip, and the bit chip is exactly the same as Dragoon's. Now, having the sharpest tip means that this one doesn't nearly stand upright as well as the others, but it can just about do it. Now, when it comes to a simple spinning top like this, which is quite small, isn't very heavy, and doesn't spin very fast, a sharp tip is almost always ideal, and Driger easily spins the best of the 4. It is not even a question, and if it wasn't for variety, I would have just given all 4 Beyblades the same exact tip, because it is clearly superior. But obviously, that's less interesting and less fun. Just to say I did, here's a quick battle. And that's about as well as that usually goes. Yep, they sure don't make Beyblades like they used to. I don't actually have my original tops anymore, but I do have these burst versions for comparison, and here they are side by side. I'm really happy with the way these turned out. With that said, I hope my approach isn't too controversial, and I hope that the LEGO Beyblade community finds something to enjoy here. So, until next time, this has been Rollout, signing off.